3, 2, 1, let's go! Hi everybody and welcome to another exciting edition of Boring JavaScript. I'm your host, the Virtuoid, aka Mike Smith, and today we're going to be talking about the every method on arrays. Now the every method tests each and every element of the array on a certain condition that you supply in the callback function. And if every single one of those elements tests for true, then every returns true. But if at least one of them returns false, then every will return false. Want to see how it works? Well, let's get started. So the every method is a method on the array object, so of course we're going to need an array. So here is my array here. This is an array of objects, and each of these objects has three different properties: type, name, and class. So here is my every method. Now within every method, you pass it one parameter or one argument, and that one argument is a callback function. The responsibility of your callback function is to return either a true or a false. And if it returns true, that will tell every to look at the very next element and run the same callback function. And if it runs true throughout the entire list of the arrays, then every itself will return true. But if your callback function returns false, then that will stop the process at that point and the every method will return false. So in this particular case, my callback function is just testing to see if the class, which is the third property here, if the class of the animal equals mammalia. So as you can tell here, I've got a lot of mammalian ones, but I do have two that are not mammalia. I've got the roadrunner here, which is aves, or in American English pronounced abs, and I've got reptilia here as my very last one. So what will happen with this callback function? Well, every is going to test every single one of the elements. So it's going to start with this one, and is the class mammalia? Yep, it sure is. So then it's going to go to the second one. Is the class mammalia? Yep, sure is. Then it'll go to the third one. Is the class mammalia? Yep, sure is. The fourth one, same thing. Fifth one, same thing. Finally, it gets to the sixth one here, and the class is aves and not mammalia. At that point, your callback function is going to return false. And because it returns false, every is then going to return false. So it's going to stop checking at that particular point. So that's the whole purpose of the every method, to test each and every single one of the elements in the array to return true if every single one of them tests true in your conditions that you supply, or if at least one tests false, to return false. So I should expect this very first one to return false. Now what I've done here is I have now created a new array called mammals by using the filter method. And I'm not going to cover the filter method, but the filter method basically goes through each and every single one of the array elements, and it will create a whole new array based upon the condition that you supply within the your callback function. So for in this case, I'm saying I want you to return me an array called mammals that will only include all of the animals that has a class of mammalia. So when I do that, and if I use the every method against the mammals class, the mammals array, which the mammals array just contains mammalia, this should now turn to true, because is mammalia every will return true and give that to is mammalia automatically, because each and every single one of these will be mammalia. Why? Because we've set the filter here on line 16. So again, the very first time through, we have aves and reptilia here, but as soon as it gets the aves, it's going to return false. So I should expect this first one here to be no, the first console.log. I'm going to extract a new array which just has mammalia in it. So when we do the same every function again, it should now return true because everything is mammalia. So the first one should be no, the second one should be yes. Let's check to make sure. So let's flip back over to node and let's type in node every. Oh, will you look at that? Sure enough, it happened. So my first animal said no because I had I had one entry in there called avis, which was the bird, the roadrunner. That's when it stopped checking because it was already false, so it didn't need to check all the rest of the elements. But the second time through, where I had filtered with mammals, that basically had nothing but the mammalia class in there, and that means that every came out to be yes. So in recap, every checks every single one of the elements in the array for a certain condition, and as long as that condition returns true, every will eventually turn true if every single one of the elements check to be true. Second, it finds one that says false, it clicks the false. And that's it. That's really all there is to the every method. Now, I do want to show you two little gotchas with the every method I want you to be aware of that could kind of mess up if you're not very careful. And we'll take a look at that next. So the first of the two gotchas is what happens on an empty array. Well, let's take a quick look. So here's my code. I have an empty array, and again, I'm testing to see if every single animal happens to have a class of mammalia. So what's going to happen? Well, let's just go over to node and find out. Let's flip the node, type in node 0, and are all my animals mammal? Well, yes, they are. So what has happened here is that if you use the every method on an empty array, every will always return true. No matter what kind of condition you put in there, it will always return true. So just want to make sure that you are aware of that. To emphasize again, on an empty array, every always returns true. Now, what happens if the array changes while it's in the middle of doing the every function? Now, something like this shouldn't really ever happen, but this is for academic sake more than anything. So ignore the really cruddy code that I've got here. So let's bring up the new code. Let's kill the comments there. Let's take a quick look at the code and see what it does. So here I have my array, and each one of these is a class of mammalia. And I've got a larger function here that actually just eventually says I want to return if my class is equal to mammalia, which right now every one of my animals are of a mammalia class. But what is happening here is I've expanded my callback function to I am inserting 5 different lizards at the very end of my animals. So my animals should, once it finishes up here, have these mammalias plus 5 more lizards appended to the very end. And again, I'm returning if animal class equals mammalia. So at the end, the array should have, what is this, 8 different, is that 7? That's 7 different mammalias and 5 different lizards. So I should expect this to come up to be no, because not all of my animals are mammalia. So let's go over to node and let's take a quick look at that. Let's clear our screen from what we had before. And let's go back to node 0. And, ooh, what happened here? It says that all the animals are mammals. But no, they're not. I've got 5 reptiles here. I got 5 different lizards. So what happened? Well, with the every method in JavaScript, what it does is it sets the items to be iterated before it actually enters into the every method. So once we first got into the every method, let's flip back over to our code here. Once we first got into the every method, the very first thing JavaScript said was, okay, I've got these 7 items here. Those are the set of 7 items I'm going to iterate over. So even though I'm adding animals within my array here, I'm mutating the array. As far as JavaScript is concerned, these are the 7 that I am working with and none others. So I could have added a million different items to this array. It still would have come back to be yes, because it still would have only checked the 7 items. So that's very important to remember, is that every will only look at the array, or will set the items to iterate on that array at the very beginning. It will not look at anything that's been added or deleted or whatever within the array after the every has occurred. So again, this is pretty bad code here, but I just kind of wanted to show you here is that if you mutate the array, you will not get the results that you expected. So make sure whenever you use an every to do not mutate the array. And that's the second gotcha you need to take a look at. And that's all there is on the every method of arrays. I hope you enjoyed our video. Hope I didn't bore you to death. Please view all of our videos at www.boringjavascript.com. Subscribe to our YouTube channel or check out everything we have at www.thevirtualvoid.com. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you later.